What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to Blazers Uprise Live. Today, we have a pretty fun show. We are going to do our 2021 NBA Awards show. Been putting together graphics for it. Cooked up some graphics from scratch. A fresh new batch of graphics just for this stream. So that's why we're going live at 10. I said 9:30, but graphics took a little bit. But basically, what this show is going to be, it's going to be me, Eric, and our 4 mods. Yes, we have 4 mods. If you were not in the stream last night, we added another mod for the playoffs because things are bound to get crazy. They were pretty crazy on last night's stream. Jackson, poor Org Jackson, is now our 4th mod, along with Trevin, Zach, and Reese. So for all these awards, I compiled my rankings, Eric's rankings, and then our 4 mods rankings and came out with like a collective vote. So we will talk about certain people's rankings on these segments, but for the graphic, we basically compiled all 6 of our votes into the award winners, essentially, if that makes sense. Hopefully I explained that pretty well. That is what we have, and then after that, depending on how long it takes, we will maybe talk a little bit more about the Blazers' upcoming playoff series, maybe talk a little bit about the playing games, which start tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that. Eric, how's your night going, man?
Oh, pretty good. A lot better than last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good day, and
that's good.
Excited to talk about these awards. It was I had some difficulty with some of them, which we'll get into when we get to those. But overall, I think we all should have done a pretty good job. I know we have some crazy mods, but I think they took it pretty seriously.
There's a couple Reese votes that I need his logic on. Mods, when we get to the awards, if you want, you can post your awards in chat, since obviously you stand out. You got blue names. So if you guys want to, you guys can, copy paste what you sent me as we get to each award and, post your Rookie of the Year rankings. So essentially for MVP, I had myself, Eric, and the 4 mods rank MVP 1 through 5, and then basically based on where players slotted in, that's how we came up with our rankings. For every other award, I had them rank them 1 through 3. We still have rankings 1 through 5 since we had some differing picks, and then all NBA teams and all defensive teams. Didn't do an all rookie team, forgot to ask for that, but no problem. There's some of these that we were in agreement on, pretty much everybody. There's some of these were just there was heavy disagreement. So without further ado, you want to kick things off, Eric?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, so the Blazers Uprise 2021 NBA Most Valuable Player is going to be Nikola Jokic. I don't think this was any surprise. All six people had Nikola Jokic number 1 as MVP. After that, it differed pretty wildly. Dame got a second place vote, Embiid got a second place vote, Steph Curry, I believe, got a second place vote. So this is the top 5. You also had Jimmy Butler getting a vote and Chris Paul getting a vote. Reese didn't have Damian Lillard in his top 5. I believe he was the only one. Let me pull up the. I got a picture on my phone to go off of for this. Yeah, Reese didn't have Damian Lillard in his top 5. His top 5 was Jokic, Giannis, Embiid, Curry, and Jimmy Butler. Everybody else had Lillard in their top 5 as far as I can tell. What are your thoughts, Eric, on these top 5 rankings? What did you have different? What do you think of them?
I think it's pretty crazy that Dame finishes 5th. I was the one that had him 2nd. I feel like Jokic, I've said this many times, I think he should be unanimous. I think he had a wonderful season. He has everything that you can talk about for an MVP, whether it's, stat-wise or, how valuable you are to your team when you're missing players and things like that. He had it all this year with Murray going down and several other injuries, and he carried that team to the 3rd place in a very tough Eastern Conference. And so I think he should have been far and away the number 1 person. After that,
the number 1 person.
The number 1 MVP person. But
didn't you have Jokic first?
I just said Jokic. Yeah, I was talking about Jokic.
Oh yeah, okay, sorry. I thought you were still talking about Lillard. Yeah, yeah.
No. But behind Jokic, I just think that Curry and Dame did more with less than some of those other guys did. And therefore, I think they deserved, when you're talking about most valuable to their teams, we saw how much Portland struggled with Dame missing games or when he was not playing at 100%. And then we saw how Golden State did this year when they were missing Steph. And I feel like Dame and Curry should be 2 and 3 in my opinion. Embiid had a wonderful year, but he did miss 21 games, I believe, and in a shortened season, I think that's quite a bit to miss to be considered. I mean, he's definitely had an MVP type season in the games he played, and then Giannis is, I think, kind of getting overlooked because the Bucks fall to the 3rd seed. They've been the 1st seed the last couple of years, and he's had a fantastic season. It's just kind of lost in the shuffle of him doing the same things he always does.
Yeah, so me, you, Zach, and Jackson had the same top 5. It was just in different order. I had Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, Curry, Dame. Though 2 through 5, though, I feel like it's just, I mean, it's very, very close amongst all those. It depends on what you value. I mean, and probably shouldn't have Embiid 2 with how much he's missed. It's just you got Philadelphia as the 1 seed in the East, and when he's played, he's been phenomenal. So Embiid, how you rate him depends on how much you knock his case for how many games he's missed. I didn't realize he missed that many, though. Giannis at 3, I do think he's getting overlooked. I agree with that. And then Curry and Lillard, I mean, Curry's stats are a little bit better. Lillard's team success is a little bit better, but I think Lillard has better talent around him. The Warriors are 8th and the Blazers are 6th. There's really not much separation between those two teams, so that's why I put Curry ahead of him, just because of what he's done lately, especially his stat profile is just a little bit better than Dame's.
Reese trying to excuse this by saying he forgot about Dame. How do you Blazer fan forget about Dame in MVP voting? That's either people are right.
Reese, your mod card's gonna get revoked, man.
I woke up to a conversation today about whether or not Reese is actually a Blazer fan, and so I'm starting to think that maybe that's true a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, come on, Reese. As far as Zach went, Zach had Jokic, Curry, Embiid, Lillard, Giannis. Jackson had Jokic, Giannis, Curry. He had Jokic, Giannis, Embiid, Curry, Lillard. So Zach had Chris Paul 5th. Or no, not Zach. Trevin had Chris Paul 5th, but Trevin also had Lillard 2nd. So there was 2 people.
He said he forgot about Giannis, though, which is more understandable than forgetting about Dame.
I mean, media, when they vote for these awards, forget about things all the time, so that's not any surprise. Yeah. So Chris Paul 5th, forgetting about Giannis, you would have had Giannis. If Reese remembered Dame, maybe Dame's a little bit higher, but I think this is the clear-cut top 5. There's a lot of people saying Chris Paul for MVP. I don't agree at all. Like, I know he's had a big impact on that team, but he's getting, 17 and 8? I mean, just statistically, there is no stat profile that makes a case for him being MVP. And, I mean, some people argue Devin Booker is the best player on that team and that Chris Paul isn't even the best player on his team. So, I don't necessarily agree with that argument, but, I mean, it is a debate. So I can't have Chris Paul in the top 5. As far as Jimmy Butler goes, he's missed time too, and that team's the 6th seed, so it's not like they got a higher seeding than Portland. So I think this is the clear-cut top 5. Chat, do any of you disagree with this being the clear-cut top 5? Let me know in chat.
I'd also be interested in people's reasoning for putting Curry over Lillard. Is it just that he had better stats, had a little bit of a monumental run here the last few weeks? Or
yeah, I mean, I made the case for it just because there's not much different in the team's success. Warriors are 8th, Blazers are 6th. And Curry's stats, I did not mean to do that. Curry's stats are just better. You know, he's been more efficient. scoring at a higher rate. Dame assists at a higher rate. I mean, it's not like there's a drastic difference at all statistically between Dame and Steph. I just think Steph has been better statistically, and team success-wise, they're pretty close. And I think Steph has less around him as well than Dame does.
I just remember all those people last year saying, ain't no MVP on a 8th or 9th place team. So, yeah, it's just kind of...
Definitely can't have Curry winning it as the 8th seed, but when it comes down to ranking them, you got some candidates on lower seeded teams there with Dame and Steph. So anyway, you ready to move on to the next awards?
Yes.
All right. Rookie of the Year is LaMelo Ball. Everybody had LaMelo Ball number 1. Everybody had Anthony Edwards number 2.
I didn't.
You didn't have Anthony Edwards number 2? Oh, you had Anthony Edwards number 3. He is still
No, I had Anthony Edwards 1.
Oh, you had Anthony Edwards 1. Okay. So 5 of us had LaMelo Ball 1. You had Anthony Edwards 1. I'll get your reasoning on that for a second. Yeah, I'm looking at this. You also had Zach with Anthony Edwards number 1, so unless that's a typo. But I had LaMelo Ball number 1. It was really tough for me. Reese had LaMelo Ball number 1. Trevin had LaMelo Ball number 1. And Jackson had LaMelo Ball number 1. Everybody had LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards like in some combination as 1 and 2. 4 people had Tyrese Halliburton number 3. 2 people had Quickly number 3. I had Halliburton. You had Halliburton. Zach had Halliburton. And Trevin had Halliburton. Reese and Jackson had Quickly number 3. Those were the only 4 players to get votes. Since I only took top 3, we were pretty much in agreement on this. LaMelo Ball winning Rookie of the Year. Eric, what is your case for Anthony Edwards over LaMelo Ball?
Yeah, it's not just because I drafted him Dizzy D, but anyways, I thought Ball was the clear-cut number 1 Rookie of the Year up until the point of the wrist injury, and he ended up coming back faster than originally thought, so that didn't really affect him too much. But during that time, I felt like Edwards really came on strong and made Minnesota a very tough team, and he was a big reason for them being a lot better in the second half of the season, and he really started to come into his own. They were without D'Angelo Russell for a while, so he was playing major minutes, and I just felt like consistency-wise, even after a slow start for the rest of the season, he was a little bit better than LaMelo, but it's honestly not something I'm willing to die on. Like I could have seen it going either way. It was pretty close. Almost a coin flip in my opinion.
Yeah, the problem is our votes were so close. I copied and pasted and then tried to rearrange. So Zach had LaMelo Ball first. That's what he said in chat. So everybody except for Eric had LaMelo Ball first. But like it was tough for me because LaMelo missed some time. And Anthony Edwards came on strong, as you said. LaMelo's stats were better, but he missed some time. I think the tiebreaker for me was LaMelo's production actually translated to a jump in team success. You know what I mean? Like, sure, they added Gordon Hayward, but Charlotte's going to be playing in a play-in. Minnesota wasn't close to a play-in. There was a jump in team success due to LaMelo Ball. And I think if you put Anthony Edwards on Charlotte instead of LaMelo Ball, they don't have quite that same jump in team success. So that was kind of the tiebreaker for me, is kind of impact LaMelo had on winning for Charlotte.
Yep, can't argue with that.
As far as number 3, Halliburton was my number 3. I don't know who would have been my number 4. It might have been Quickly. I've always liked Quickly's game, but Halliburton was a pretty clear-cut number 3. Like, statistically, he has a case for number 3, but then, like, he's a player that... He's one of those guys that numbers don't explain the true story. He's a guy who always makes the right play, good defender, very efficient, more efficient than either of the guys ahead of him, and a good defender. So Halliburton was a guy that I thought was a pretty clear-cut number 3.
Yeah, I voted for Halliburton as my 3rd as well. There's a number of different guys, and of course Halliburton got hurt, but while he was playing, I felt like he was really good and could have possibly been up there with Ball and Edwards had he not been on a team where he didn't really have the path to as much playing time and usage as some of those other guys. But overall, I think he had a really strong rookie year, and he's going to be a great player. Quickly, like, yes, he had a great year, so I considered putting him there. He would have been in my top five, but a lot of the Knicks' success, or like I've seen games where he dominated, but I've also seen games where he was a non-factor a lot, and it was just a little inconsistent. Even though he's going to be a good player, and he was going to end up being a steal for where they picked him at.
Yep. Jackson said he wanted to reward quickly. He voted quickly, number 3. He said he wanted to reward quickly because he's putting up good stats on a good team, on a playoff team. Whereas, Halliburton is, on the Sacramento Kings. They're not even playing in the play-in. But granted, I think you put Halliburton in New York and he's doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like that, Halliburton is a winning player. Mm-hmm. His game is just, I love his game. So, I don't want to dock Halliburton for that. And I think Halliburton has had the better season in terms of performance. So Halliburton was number 3. That is Rookie of the Year. The next award, you got Joe Ingles winning 6th Man of the Year. Joe Ingles is coming off the bench now in Utah. They're choosing to start Royce O'Neal ahead of him. You had 2 6th Man of the Year candidates in Utah. That's Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson ended up being 3rd in our rankings. Number 2 was Derrick Rose, who has had a big impact on the New York Knicks as a backup point guard. Lineups consisting of Derrick Rose performed very, very well there. Tibbs gets another one of his old players, and it's working out there in New York, so he's number 2. Number 4 was Thad Young. He only got 1 vote. That was Reese, voting him 2nd for 6th Man of the Year. And then Carmelo Anthony ended up in 5th. Eric, you voted him for 3rd for 6th Man of the Year, and somebody else voted him for 3rd. I made the second place vote 3 points, and I made the third place vote 1 point. So that's why I had Thad Young above. But that, of course, weigh it how you want. Carmelo Anthony did get 2 votes for 3rd for 6th Man of the Year. That was you, and that was Trevin. So Reese had. I just want to talk about this, then we can talk about the rest of the rankings. Reese had Thad Young number 2. You want to know who he had number 3? That I'm just scratching my head at, and I want to hear his justification for it.
Jalen Brunson.
He had Jalen Brunson number 3, which was, I thought, pretty head scratching to me. I don't even think Jalen. Isn't Hardaway Jr. coming off the bench? Because I've seen some articles about him being a potential 6th Man of the Year.
Yeah.
I don't see how Jalen Brunson is even the best 6th man on his own team then. He's had a good season, but He's had a better season than I thought looking at it, but so it's not quite as head-scratching. He is getting 12.5 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shooting 52% from the field, 40% from 3. So he's having a pretty good season, so it's not quite as head-scratching as I thought, but still, I don't know. Don't necessarily agree with that, Reese. It's a good sleeper pick, though. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with Brunson being on there. Some of those were kind of hard to pick. I think I like that most of the people took Ingles over Clarkson. I think they both deserve to be on this list. But when you look at Clarkson's stats, even though he's putting up the points per game, it's on high volume and low efficiency. So that's why I did not have him number 1. And I chose Ingles as number 1 over him. And my reasoning behind Carmelo Anthony is, I mean, like it or not, he has had some impact on coming into a game and kind of changing the game with his shot making. And that is something that someone coming off the bench, that's a useful skill to have. And he shot the 3 well, shot free throws well, which helped his efficiency, even if his 2-point shots wasn't a high percentage. I mean, he ended up at 42.1%, I think, field goal percentage, which is a little higher than it was earlier in the season. I think he was below 40% the first month or so of the season. So after struggling at the beginning of the year, I felt like he was a pretty steady influence off our bench and a big reason why a lot of games that we had no game plan. He kind of kept the second unit not too far away from the team we were playing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, offensively, I think, yeah, you could definitely make the case for him being number three. Just obviously defense and the floor, different story. I had Ingles, Rose, and Clarkson, 1, 2, and 3. Zach also had Ingles, Rose, Clarkson, 1, 2, and 3. You had Ingles, Clarkson, Carmelo. Reese had Ingles, Thad Young, Jalen Brunson. Trevin had Ingles, Clarkson, and Carmelo. And then Jackson had... Let me find it here. Jackson had Rose, number 1. Ingles, number 2. And Clarkson, number 3. So me, Zach, Jackson all had Derrick Rose, Ingles, and Clarkson, and some combination. 5 people had Joe Ingles, number 1, though.
Yeah. The thing with Rose, he only ends up playing 50 games this year, so he missed a lot of time. So if you're talking about his impact on the Knicks, yes, he was impactful, but that was only for 32 games of the season coming off the bench. So I couldn't justify putting him ahead of some of the guys who had done it for 70 games or so this year.
Yeah, I see him being listed as 35 games for the Knicks, 15 for the Pacers for that 50.
He played 35 games.
32 off the bench.
3
yeah.
he started, so yeah.
That's the thing with Detroit, though, is they probably weren't in any rush to bring him back. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't really remember what his injury was, but yeah, there's a lot of players that played around kind of 50 games this year. I'm honestly docking players less for missing 20 games this year because it seems like there's more high-profile players that miss 20 games. You know what I mean? So
it's definitely going to come into play for me later.
Yeah, so I didn't dock him as much as I maybe normally would have, so that's why I had Rose number
yeah,
2.
so to be fair on this, I'm not saying because he missed games. I'm saying because when you say he was super impactful for the Knicks, that was only 32 games versus like Ingles and Clarkson who played like 60 plus games and have twice the resume for helping their team win as a 6-man.
Here's the thing, though, is Ingles did start 30 games.
Yeah.
He came off the bench 37 games. So if you're only counting games coming off the bench, it's actually pretty close between those two.
That's like Trent for us. Like he started like a majority of his games for Portland this year, but that was because of injury. It wasn't because he was like so good he became the starter or whatever.
Yeah. But Rose on the season, I'm kind of curious what his stat line is. 15 points per game, 4 assists in New York. He's getting basically that in 27 minutes. So yeah, definitely can make a case. That's a lot of awards. It seems like there's kind of a clear-cut number 1, and then it's debatable beyond that.
Yeah, and for the record, Melo came off the bench 66 games this year, so only missed 3. So he has that factor as well. But.
Let's move on.
Once again, not a hill I'm willing to die on.
Yeah. Let's move on to most improved. That's Julius Randle, and it was a consensus vote. All 6 of us had Julius Randle as the number 1 most improved player. A lot of people had Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan? Whoa. That would be quite incredible if Michael Jordan played this year and improved on him.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, considering where he would, be at like 50, if he comes back, that would be a vast improvement in his game at this point in his lifetime. But 4 people had Michael Porter Jr. I didn't have Michael Porter Jr. in my top 3. Surprise. And then
Hater.
Zach didn't have Michael Porter Jr. in his top 3. My case for not putting Michael Porter Jr. in my top 3 was I feel like
second,
because it was a bit debatable. There was a lot of kind of a mixed bag of votes, but Reese had him 3rd, Trevin had him 2nd, Jackson had him 2nd, you had him 3rd. There was no other player with like appearing 5 times essentially.
Yeah.
So basically, to determine this, is I have made first place votes 5 points, second place votes 3 points, and third place votes 1 point, and then I added them up. So it is like just a number system. But my whole case for not putting Michael Porter Jr. as most improved is I feel like a lot of his statistical improvement just came from playing more minutes. Last year he played 16 minutes per game. This year he played 31. Per 36, he averaged 1.5 more points per game this year. He averaged 0.5 less assists, 2 less rebounds, less steals. His free throw percentage went down. Efficiency went up, though. His 2-point percentage went up by 6 percentage points, and his 3-point shot went up by 2 percentage points. It's just a lot of his improvement came from just a minutes increase, and also like going into your second season, I kind of expect improvement. So that was my whole reason for not putting Michael Porter Jr. in my top 3.
Yeah, but I mean, people said that about CJ's year, like when he won Most Improved. That he just got like a minutes increase and a role increase,
Yeah, but he went from like 3 points per game to 20, so it was more than just the minutes increase. And he like wasn't playing at all. If somebody's not playing at all and then they have that happen, sure. But like rookie year playing 60 minutes a game and the second year playing 31.
As Eric Olson points out, for me, the reason why I put him third was because after Jamal Murray went down, he kind of stepped up in that role for their second option and really came on in the second half of the season. And so I feel like he was, along with Jokic obviously playing at an MVP level, was one of the reasons why they were able to hang on as well as they did.
Yep. Third is Jeremy. Go ahead.
Just go ahead and say this because this is what I want to talk about.
Yeah, third is Jeremy Grant. I had him third. You had him second. Zach didn't have him at all. Reese didn't have him at all. Trevin had him third. And
okay, I have issue with this.
What's up?
I had Grant first. I switched it to Randall just because, Randall had a fantastic season and improved in areas that I didn't think he'd be possible to improve. But Jeremy Grant goes to Detroit, becomes the number one option. Not one person thought he would succeed in that role as a number one option. And this guy averaged, 22 points per game without like a huge drop in efficiency. His field goal percentage went down a couple points, but other than that, his 3-point percentage over his career went up slightly. His free throw percentage went up. So this guy, and I know it's a bad team, but he went from 10 points a game to 24 points per game as the main guy on a team. The whole defense is focusing on him, so.
Yeah, he averaged 12 points per game last season and averaged 20. I was
looking at career, sorry.
Yeah, he averaged 22
12
points
to
per
22,
game this
sorry.
Yeah, for me, though, it's like part of that is a product of going from a good to bad team. He definitely improved and showcased some things that people didn't think he had, but he averaged 27 minutes per game last year, 34 minutes per game this year, so there is a minutes increase there, and then it's a product of going from a good team to a bad team. If he went from a good team to another good team, I don't think he would be in consideration in the top 3 right now. He would have maybe went from 12 points per game to 15 or 16, but he wouldn't be in consideration for the award. So that's why I did have him third, but I don't know. I think you could make the case for him not being top 3, to be honest.
To me, though, I agree with what you're saying. Stat padding maybe on a bad team, but to go from a role player, defensive specialist, spot up shooter, kind of not really a focus of an offense, to being a completely different role and actually succeeding, stat wise at least, in that role and having a decent season, proving that he can be a first option maybe on a team if he had better talent around him. I think that is a drastic improvement in your game. That's showing a lot of improvement, not just you became a better scorer because you went to a bad team, and got more volume. He actually, I feel like his role changed enough too to show that he's a completely different player this year than last year. So I felt like that's my definition of a most improved player. And if it wasn't for Randall improving, like I said, in areas that, 3-point percentage and defense that didn't seem to be a thing that he would ever improve on, I think he should have been number one. But Yeah, so to have him 3, I think is a little crazy to me, but
Uh,
he's
I, I don't know. I mean, like, here's the thing: is like, what is he gonna be if he goes and plays for a good team? Now, is he going to be like the Jeremy Grant we see in Detroit, or is it going to be more like Denver Nuggets Jeremy Grant? Probably something in between. Obviously, there's a gray area. It's just, it's hard for me to put a lot of stock when, like, he was talented before, and that's the thing. A lot of these guys are maybe more talented than you would think that are on good teams. And if you take them and put them on a bad team, they're not improving like Jeremy Grant did. But, you know, if they're gifted that role and given that chance, maybe. Like, I think Jeremy Grant knew he could be this type of player, and that's why he left Denver, because he wanted the chance to actually show it. So, I don't know. It's definitely debatable for top 3, I think.
If you're being honest with yourself, you didn't think he would be this type of player, right? I for sure didn't.
No, not at all, not at all. Like, he definitely improved. He definitely. I'm not saying he didn't improve. It's just you got a lot of guys that improved a lot. I'm
just saying, like, when they signed him, I was like, man, what are they doing? Like, he's like a role player, and they're paying him to be like their main guy. So I didn't think he would succeed. I guess that's part of my influence on that.
Let's move on to some other players. Zach had Randall number 1, Jokic number 2, Christian Wood number 3. Let's talk about Christian Wood. Zach says Wood did what Grant did, but with better efficiency. The thing is with Wood, though, is he was showcasing what he did this year during like his final 20 games with Detroit. His final 20 games with Detroit last year was pretty much the player he is this year. So that's the thing with Grant. It's not like he did it over 20 games, the last 20 games last year with Denver, and then came to Detroit and continued doing the same thing as he was doing at the end of last season. That's why I didn't have Christian Wood in it. Because, like, if you look at Christian Wood's stats and just from season to season, it's like, oh, wow, he went from 13 points per game to 21. But there's a minutes increase there. Per 36 last year, Christian Wood was getting you 22 points per game. This year, it's 23.3. You know what I mean? Whereas Jeremy Grant last year was getting you about 16.5 per 36 points per game, and this year he's getting you 23 or so. So that's the thing with Christian Wood is even last season, like even if you take the whole season into account on a per minute basis, he was doing what he's been doing this year. He just got obviously a minutes increase, and during his last 20 games, he was probably even better over the last 20 games last year than he's been this season on average. So,
and for
he's also
me,
been hurt a lot.
It's the opposite of what I just said about Jeremy Grant. I thought Detroit should have kept Christian Wood, and he would have been Jeremy Grant this year on Detroit, right? And so I thought he was good enough to show this. So then I guess that kind of, I'm not surprised by it. Whereas Jeremy Grant, I didn't think he was capable of this type of role. So that bumps him up, in my opinion, that he did something, showed me something that I didn't think. But Christian Wood, I mean, yeah, it was probably a little better than even I thought, but like you said, he was already showing flashes, and those in the know like knew about him even before he showed those flashes last year. He just hadn't really gotten a consistent chance in the NBA yet.
Yep. So Reese had, where's it at here? Reese had Julius Randle number 1, Kyle Anderson number 2, and Michael Porter Jr. number 3. What's the case for Kyle Anderson, Reese?
Who did he have 3? Did you say?
He had Michael Porter Jr. number 3. He had Kyle Anderson number 2. I want to hear him make his case in chat.
See, for me, Anderson had one of those Aaron Gordon type seasons where he started off the season super hot, was shooting like above 40% from 3, and that's always been one of the knocks on him, is he's not like the greatest 3-point shooter, right? And so you're like, wow, if he can become a 40% 3-point shooter, much like Aaron Gordon, he'd be incredible with his ball handling and passing skills. And then towards the end of the season, just off the cliff and finished at 36%, which is still high for him, but to me, it was just too big of a fall off efficiency wise to really say that he improved that much. He just got hot at the beginning of the season.
I mean,
in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to figure out what he is as a shooter. But he, did go from 28% to 36%, so he never had hot streaks like that in the past. So
Right.
that's an improvement. Would have liked to see him sustain it for sure. But he went from 6 points per game to 12 points per game, 2.4 assists per game to 3.6 assists per game, 4.3 rebounds to 5.7. Minutes per game went from 20 minutes per game to 27. So he definitely improved. Definitely improved. I can't really make a case for him being in the top three. But like offensive box plus minus was always around negative 1.5. This year it was positive 1.5, and that's because he averaged, excluding his rookie season, he averaged by far a career low turnover percentage and a career high assist percentage. So his playmaking quality definitely improved. He went from about a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio to almost a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So I know Reese, really looks at those more advanced things. So that's probably why something he valued in making his case. But yeah. My number 2 was Chris Boucher, and that was probably my most bold, most improved player pick. And my case for Chris Boucher is, the dude went from averaging 6.5 points per game to 13.5 points per game, more than doubled his points per game. 4.5 rebounds to almost
But double
7
his minutes too. Almost.
Yeah. It went from 13 minutes per game to 24. Blocks, he went from 1 block a game to 1.9. I'll use per 36 to get rid of the minutes differential. He did go from 18 points per game to 20 points per game, but blocks, if you use per 36,
Yeah. It actually went down in rebounds.
His efficiency just went up a ton. He went from shooting 57% from 2 to 61%. He went from 32% from 3 to 38% from 3, and I think that's very important because he's a center. If this is a Kyle Anderson doing it, Kyle Anderson's a wing. He needs to be able to shoot 38%, but being able to be a legitimate stretch 5 this year and some of the big performances he had, I think makes him teams want a elite rim protecting 3-and-D 5. You know what I mean? A 5 that can shoot the 3 ball at a very high level and then block shots at a very high level. And this year he blocked shots at an extremely high level, 2.8 blocks per game. He's averaging 20 points per 36, 10 rebounds. I think if he got 35 minutes a game, he would be like a borderline all-star, given what I saw from him this year. So maybe not necessarily the statistical case, but I think that 3-point improvement is huge just because he's now a legitimate floor spacer, a legitimate 3-point option. His efficiency improvement was huge. And defensively this year, phenomenal as a rim protector. Also averaged a career high assist percentage by 2 points. Averaged a career low turnover percentage. So that's my case for Chris Boucher.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Boucher. Like you mentioned, I just felt like, you mentioned this with Michael Porter Jr. It was more just a minutes increase because he was showing flashes of this last year, and his stats overall, other than his shooting efficiency, weren't that much out of line from last year when you look at the overall numbers. But yeah,
I will use your Jeremy Grant case though. Michael Porter Jr. just continued doing what he was doing. Chris Boucher transformed himself into a 3-point threat. Whereas last year at 32%, yeah, he can knock down the occasional one, but he's not going to keep defenses honest and keep centers playing out on him. This year, per game, doubled his 3-point minutes increase, yada yada, but from 32 to 38%, I think you see a difference there. Where at 32%, the center is going to try and stay around the rim, a rim protecting center, and he'll live with you knocking down threes. So 38%, that center has to get out on you, on the 3-point arc. And that opens up the paint for your teammates to drive.
Yeah.
And it's basically creates a pick your poison scenario. So adding that, I think, was huge. Just a huge skill for a center to add. Whereas I look at Michael Porter Jr. and I don't think he really added a skill, so to say.
Luckily, you said center because Anthony Simons increased his 3-point percentage by 9%.
Yeah. It's That's the thing, though, is like Anthony needs to be shooting the three ball well. He's a scoring combo guard, whereas like Chris Boucher's a shot blocking center. So that's kind of, that was like my biggest case for it, essentially. Other than that, Jokic got some votes. I was a little surprised to see that. Is there really a case for Jokic?
He's better than he was last year, but
he was already so great.
In my mind, that would be like saying last year Dame should have gotten most improved or something. Yeah, I mean, the greats get better every year and add something to their game. And I don't really like voting for someone both MVP and most improved, I guess. But
per 36, he went from 22.4 points per game to 27.5, so there's a scoring increase there. In terms of like anything else, though, there isn't enough of an increase. Other than 3-point percentage, he did go up from 31 to 38%. It was just like he was already so great that, it's hard to put him there. But I see the case people made, like advanced stats, he improved a lot, so I understand why people would have him in their top 3. But he was just already so good that it's hard to put him there.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any other votes? I don't think there was any other votes for most improved. Let's move on to the next one we got, which is going to be Coach of the Year. Everybody had the same top 3, and I don't think this is any surprise. Coach Thibodeau. I didn't want to fit Thibodeau in there, so that's why I just said Coach Tibbs for Coach of the Year. Tom Thibodeau won Coach of the Year. I believe 4 people had him as their first place vote. That would be Jackson, Eric, Zach, and Reese. Trevin had Monty Williams number 1, and I had Quinn Snyder number 1. So Thibodeau wins it. Monty Williams got more second place votes than Quinn Snyder. That's why he's number 2, and then Quinn Snyder is number 3.
This one was incredibly difficult for me. Ultimately, I went with the coach who transformed his team from a bottom feeder to a respectable 4th seed in the playoffs, had his team go from one of the worst defenses to one of the best defensives this year, and that was Tom Thibodeau. When it came down for the other two, I mean, those 2 teams have way more talent than the Knicks, and I'm not saying that they should have been 1 and 2, and that's why they're still on this list. And then when it came down to Monty versus Quinn Snyder, I just felt like the jump the Suns had was a little more impressive than Utah. But once again, I'm not willing to die on a hill either way.
Yeah, here's why I put Monty Williams number 3. Okay, Chris Paul makes it a lot easier on a coach. Chris Paul is almost a coach himself. We saw him carry Billy Donovan last year, and everybody's making Coach of the Year, cases for Billy Donovan. Mm-hmm. But, like, I thought Chris Paul deserved Coach of the Year more last year than Billy Donovan, and Chris Paul's a player. You know what I mean? So, like, him getting Chris Paul, like, that was a godsend to that team, and it makes things easier on Monty. Still definitely top 3 for Coach of the Year. It's just, when you have Chris Paul, he basically helps you out a lot. So that's why I had Snyder and Thibodeau above him. But does that case make sense?
Yeah, but where did you have the Suns, honestly, beginning of the year?
Oh, I had him lower. For sure. But like part of that was like I didn't expect Ayton to progress defensively into what he did. Like I didn't expect the whole team to progress defensively into what they did, and I think Monty Williams definitely has a part in that. Like I have him 3rd. But Chris Paul also has a part in that.
Yeah. For me, they were
kind of a leader.
They were showing signs in the bubble and in the last season, and then you could, you definitely make the case that Chris Paul was the reason. If they would have struggled this year, you could have also made the case that they just happened to catch lightning in a bottle last year. But yeah, overall, I just felt like I had Utah and Phoenix pretty close. I think I've had them in that range, just below Portland when we did our, preseason preview or whatever. But just the fact that Monty, I don't know. I didn't expect Phoenix to get there. There was always a chance Utah could improve on what they did. They have the talent there. They're a pretty deep team. So once again, I have no problem with flipping those guys or in any order in these 3.
Yeah, here's the thing for Tibbs versus Snyder for me is like how much is Thibodeau responsible for Julius Randle's improvement? If you think Thibodeau is like the main reason he improved, then yes, Thibodeau should be number one. If you think that was Julius Randle kind of figuring out his game in the last offseason, then and that's kind of what I lean towards, then it's more of a debate. So it's kind of like it's hard to tell. Like, it's just speculation. I don't know how much Thibodeau, like how big of a role. Obviously, Thibodeau did play a role, but I don't know how big of a role when it comes to like a guy like R.J. Barrett and some other guys. That's just, I think, second year improvement has a part in that. Obviously, Thibodeau helped them tremendously, but like for me, Snyder, just that was such unexpected improvement from the Utah Jazz. They were just like fifth seed, just stuck in the middle of the pack. And then they burst out into being a number one seed, best record in the league. And that was with them missing Donovan Mitchell for a big stretch this year. That was with them having some guys hurt. And it was like when they had guys hurt, they didn't really seem to miss a beat. It was like their style play. They played such a good style of play. They could be missing a Donovan Mitchell, and it didn't matter. I mean, Portland was on a hot streak, and Utah came very close to beating them without their starting backcourt, without two All-Stars. You know what I mean? So that was kind of my case for Quinn Snyder compared to a Tom Thibodeau.
So let me ask you a question about the Julius Randle thing.
Mm-hmm.
So next year, Blazers get a new coach. We're a good defensive team. We go from 29th to, say, like 8th or something. And Dame looks like a different player on defense. Would you give that credit to Dame, or would you give that credit to a new coach coming in and transforming the defense and getting a player like Dame to maybe see some things or do some things on that end that made them more successful?
Both, because we shouldn't be 29 in the first place.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, like a coach doing what he should be doing, like on a basic level, I think would have us 18th, 17th right now. You know what I mean? So like that's the thing is that's part of it. But then also it's like Dame is capable, and we've seen him, like, I don't know, like he talked to Norman Powell, and that article comes out where he starts playing pretty good defense lately after Norman Powell is just like, yeah, man, we got to play defense to win championships. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's Dame has to make it a priority for himself. Sure, a coach can help that, but Dame has to make it a priority. But like scheme changes obviously need to happen. So running the correct scheme, getting these players to improve some technique things, obviously that coach deserves credit, but he doesn't deserve all the credit.
Yeah, I just think when you have a team that's that bad on defense and they go to being one of the best, and it wasn't like a major personnel thing. I mean, like you did touch on some improvement from some young guys that could have definitely factored in, but no one would have thought that team would be good defensively with their personnel this year, even if you factor in that improvement. So, yeah, I just think someone who comes in and gets someone to focus in a different way or just see things that they weren't seeing can make all the difference. And you still need the player to put in the work. So that's why I still gave Randle the credit in the most improved department. But I also feel like Tibbs just did the most and got his team in the best position coaching wise versus just a team that might not necessarily have had a bad team talent wise and just had a good year, like Williams and Snyder, who both have talented rosters. They just had better years than anyone around.
Yeah, well, that's my whole point is like how you rank Tibbs among, between Quinn Snyder, Monty Williams, and Tibbs. How you rank him is dependent on how much you credit him for that improvement. And I definitely, he deserves a lot of credit for that improvement. I just think like how the Jazz improved this year was maybe more shocking for me than how the Knicks improved this year. And what the Jazz were able to do this year, honestly, just as surprising, maybe a little bit more so, because that's the thing. When you got a young team like that, like young players are wild cards. You know what I mean? And then you take a Julius Randle who improves as much as he did on a team with some young players that are bound to improve. Like, yeah, I mean, fourth seed happens. I didn't think there was any chance whatsoever the Jazz would turn into a number one seed in the West with the record they did when they're missing Donovan Mitchell for 19 games this year. They didn't have the healthiest year per se. So that was a little bit more surprising to me. So that's just kind of my thoughts for it.
I don't think their record was too bad once Mitchell went down, but they were so far. I mean, they were so, them and the Suns were so far ahead of a lot of the teams that it didn't really matter. But to me, the difference, the main difference I can point to in the Jazz, I mean, Snyder did a wonderful job. I'm not trying to minimize that at all, but Conley was a completely different player this year than he was last year. He was almost like a detriment to their team last year, in my opinion. And this year he played much more like what they were expecting when they brought him in and made that trade for him. And I think that went a long ways to helping them improve from last year. And that's not necessarily coaching. That's just Conley being better. But at the end of the day, Snyder did a wonderful job with that roster.
I mean, you could make the case that Conley maybe had his best season of his career. So it's not like, that's the thing, is like Snyder deserves some credit too then, is, Conley improved because Conley's aging. Right now he's 33 for a 6'1" point guard. It's getting up there in age. So he was a good player before and he kind of bounced back to that, but it just seemed like he was a lot more comfortable this year than last year. Maybe that's just because he has more time, but
well, he was also playing on a better team, and he's in a better situation than he ever was in Memphis, in my opinion. But
here's the thing with Conley, though, is he missed 21 games this year. So
yeah, I mean, he's never
had him for the entire year.
But so with Conley, though, the things he's good at, like defense and playing out of the pick and roll sometimes and setting up an offense, those are things that he's done his whole career. So it wasn't that surprising to see that he had a good year defensively, other than the fact that he was seemed like he was aging to the point where he's probably not going to get that back. But whereas Randall, like I said, wasn't thought of as a good defensive player. He wasn't a good shooter or stuff like that. And he has a season where he's all of a sudden like a really capable defender. So it's just different style, in my opinion.
I always thought he had the physical tools to be a solid defender. He was just A, not bought in, B, it seemed like an instinctual problem. Yeah. Mentally had to buy in. So all three candidates are worthy of Coach of the Year. In a different year, I think you could have any one of these three win in a different year. I think all three are very deserving. Let's move on.
Wait, for the record,
go ahead.
It could end badly with Tibbs. He does have a history of burning players out and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to take this a year at a time with him. And I will say that this doesn't mean that I think he's like the perfect coach and will have long-term success there either.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer why Stotts wasn't on?
I mean, that's pretty obvious. We've literally answered that all season long.
Yeah.
Let's do first team and second team. Third team and honorable mention is on the next slide. This wasn't compiled with a number system. It was just based on, looking at, players that were first team, second team, third team, and then kind of compiling basically just everybody's, leading candidates. I think everybody had Steph, Dame, and Jokic. A lot of people had Doncic first team. A lot of people had Giannis. Let me pull up things here.
Did you forget Defensive Player of the Year, or is that going to be later?
Oh, did I not do Defensive Player of the Year? I didn't do a slide. I forgot to do a slide for Defensive Player of the Year. Let's just talk about Defensive Player of the Year real quick. Everybody had Gobert.
Mm-hmm.
Gobert was number one. Let me see here. Hold on. Gobert was number 1. Everybody had him. All 6 people had him. Simmons number 2. Green number 3. Giannis number 4. And then Turner and Capella got a third place vote. I had Gobert Giannis. A lot of people had Gobert Simmons. Reese had Gobert Draymond Giannis. Didn't have Simmons. But Trevin had Gobert Simmons 1-2. Jackson had Gobert Simmons 1-2. Zach had Gobert Simmons 1-2. Let's see. What'd you have?
I had Gobert and Draymond number 2.
Gobert, Draymond, and you had Capella number 3. You
Yep.
were one of the Capella votes. Underrated impact he's had on Atlanta. I had Gobert, Giannis, Draymond. I think Giannis kind of has gotten overlooked this year because of how good he's been in the past couple years.
Well, their defense kind of fell off, but we talked about this before. They had a bit of a different game plan this year, and it took some time to kind of figure things out. But it's hard to vote Giannis Defensive Player of the Year when last year in the playoffs, they played Miami and he's like in the corner guarding their worst player, and you got Middleton guarding Jimmy Butler, stuff like that. And I know past years shouldn't factor in, but the fact that Milwaukee was less this year and then are not quite as good as they've been the last 2 seasons defensively. And then on top of that, they added Drew Holiday, which you think they should be better defensively than. So, yeah, I don't even know if he was the best defender on his own team, let alone
I think so they've been running more schemes this year. I think there was some growing pains with that.
Yeah.
That's just my speculation. I think they're better prepared to defend in the playoffs
no
than
question.
they were last year. So
Completely
I don't
agree.
put too much stock into their defensive rating. I'm not going to knock Giannis for something that happened last season. So that's the thing. I also think their bench defensively isn't as good as it was. Their best bench player is Bobby Portis. He's not a good defender. Starting lineup is still good defensively, but bench-wise, I think their bench is worse. So I think it could be a product of a number of things that aren't due to Giannis.
Yeah. But I can't give him Defensive Player of the Year just because.
Yeah, I didn't give him
based
to
on
him
that.
either.
But,
I got him number 2.
But for the record, Gobert, far and away the best defender. If he's not unanimous, much like Jokic, I think that's a travesty. But in my opinion, Draymond Green, the Golden State Warriors were 5th in defensive rating this year, and that is pretty much inexplainable other than the fact that they have a really good defender in Draymond back there telling people where to go. He's great help defense and stuff like that, and that's why I had him above some of those other guys.
Yeah. I think Wiggins has improved defensively. I also think Kerr's a better defensive coach than Bud. I just think Giannis, when you go, like, they're gonna have to go up against Brooklyn in the playoffs. Who's the number 1 defender you want if you're gonna go up against Brooklyn in the playoffs? I think it's Giannis. Like, Gobert is a better defender than him and definitely deserves, clearly, Defensive Player of the Year. But when you're going up against Brooklyn, you want Giannis on your team. You want Giannis to go up against KD. He is the best player in the league to guard KD, I think. Just because he's the only match size-wise and athleticism-wise. So, I mean, no, he's the only player in the world that's going to block a pull-up mid-range shot from KD. You know what I mean? So I think this year, like, they're better suited to defend in the playoffs. I think personnel-wise, they match up really well with Brooklyn. You got Giannis to throw against KD. You got Drew to throw at one of those guards. So yeah, I mean, I like Giannis's defense. His versatility is a big factor for me as well. Draymond's pretty versatile. I think you could, it's a pretty arguable case between those two for second and third. On a different day, I might be saying Draymond second. And this is just how I'm feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
But we can talk more about defense when we get to defensive teams.
Okay.
Because we do have the slide for those. So let's do All-NBA first team. You got Curry, Lillard, Doncic, Giannis, and Jokic. And this was there was a lot of agreement. This was the first team that I had. This was also the first team that you had, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first team that Zach had. It was the same team that Trevin had. When it comes to Reese, he had Curry, Lillard, Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid. So Jokic had a forward spot.
Yeah, let me just say for the record, Jokic and Embiid were technically
that's
eligible at forwards, but
gonna get to.
I could not, even though Embiid might have deserved to be on the first team, I could not justify putting one of them at a forward just because they were eligible.
Yeah, that's literally what I was getting to for me.
Yeah.
So Reese and Jackson had, instead of Doncic, they had Embiid at center and Jokic as a forward, or Embiid as a forward, Jokic as a center, and I agree with that. Like, if you're gonna have positional designations, you gotta do it based off positions. Doncic was like a guard forward, like he plays next to two guards a lot. You know what I mean? I know he's kind of their point guard, but he's a point forward. You know what I mean? He defends threes. Like, Jokic and Embiid don't play the four. They don't. They absolutely do not play the four. I mean, unless Denver is injured and throwing out some weird lineups where they got JaVale McGee playing next to Jokic. You know what I mean? Like, they are not forwards in my eyes at all. Whereas like Doncic is like, he's a guard, he's a forward. You know, LeBron plays point forward. So that's why I had Doncic as a forward. Doncic is eligible for forward. That could help Damian Lillard's case. So that's why that was my first team. Clear consensus, though. Everybody had Curry, Lillard, Giannis, and Jokic on their first team ballot.
Yeah, and then I agree with people in chat saying that it should be positionless. I think it should be like the All-Star game where you have your front court and back court, and you could have 3 front court and 2 back court, and then it would be a lot less like, oh, what position are these guys at? But
I don't think it should be positionless because it's a first team. Yeah. It's like first team. You know what I mean? It's like a team, like the best 5-man lineup.
Yeah, I don't think it should be like all point guards, but it should be like 2 guards and 3 front court players. The NBA is becoming a little less, and this year wasn't the case, but in previous years we had stuff where it was like DeAndre Jordan gets first team All NBA because he's like the only decent center or whatever. Yeah. So, but definitely not the case this year.
Here's the thing: if it was positionless, this would still be my top 5.
Yeah.
Because Embiid did miss some. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I had Embiid on my MVP ballot. Does your criteria change for first team and second team?
Yeah, a little bit because yeah, I struggle with this so much. I don't know if you have a slide for the third team or not, but okay. So there was several guys, including Harden and LeBron, who I was like, do I just leave them off completely, or do I like knock them down a team or something because they miss games? But at the same time, like, there's a lot of value in what they showed. Like, so like when you're thinking about MVP, like if the Lakers miss LeBron and they go into the tank without him, then is that like they might have been the first or second seed if LeBron doesn't get hurt? So is that like indicative on him being the MVP because like he was very valuable to their team, whereas all NBA teams is more like just the most deserving players in my opinion for this season.
Yeah, for me it's all NBA teams. I value player performance more and team success less than MVP. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason. So like Doncic versus Embiid, Doncic doesn't get knocked as much, you know what I mean? Because Embiid still missed games. So like if I based MVP as I based first team and second team, I would have had Doncic over Embiid. But team success factors on a lot. Philadelphia is the 1 seed in the East. So that's why Embiid was in my top 5.
But as RIP Blazers mentioned, so with James Harden, if he doesn't get hurt, he probably would have been on a lot of people's MVP list. I would have refused to put him on my MVP list because, as he puts it, he's a B and wanted to switch teams and get traded and basically picked what team he wanted to be traded to, and all that stuff had to join 2 other stars. I just can't give him credit for that being valuable. But in terms of like when it comes to all NBA team, if he wouldn't have gotten hurt, then he probably might have knocked one of those guys off the first team. So it was really tough with the injury thing.
Yep. As far as second team goes, second team, obviously, people differed more. You got Chris Paul, Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, Julius Randle, Joel Embiid. The only difference I had is I had Bradley Beal in as a guard and Jimmy Butler as a forward, and no Kawhi Leonard. He missed 20 games this year, so that factored in. I feel like he didn't differentiate himself enough from like a guy like a Bradley Beal in order to have him above a Bradley Beal, given the games that Kawhi Leonard missed. Bradley Beal also did miss some time, but overall, statistically, I think he had a more impressive season, and Washington fought back to an 8th seed. So I had Jimmy Butler instead of Kawhi Leonard. You had Paul George instead of Julius Randle.
Yeah, and I had Jimmy Butler as a forward.
Yeah. But you had 4 of these 5, and you had Paul George instead of Randle.
On the second team, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like Paul was pretty good. Embiid was a lock for this team if he's not on first team, so that was pretty straightforward. It was tough between a few people, but overall, I felt like the Clippers still had a really good year, and Paul George played really well, at least when he wasn't sitting out. But a lot of the things, same with Kawhi. We were talking to someone mentioned this in chat earlier. It's hard to differentiate people between being injured and their team just being like super cautious and trying to load manage them most of the year.
Yeah, but that's games that they didn't play, so gotta hold them.
Zach says, "OS, I accidentally left Kawhi off my team."
Yeah, Zach had, instead of Kawhi, he had Trae Young in there. Trae Young in as a guard, Butler as a forward. I think a lot of people had Butler as a forward, but a lot of people had Butler high. So this was just kind of like the top 10 placements in terms of with still regarding position.
Yeah.
So yeah, Zach had Trae Young instead. When it comes to Reese, so Reese had Embiid on his first team instead of Doncic. On his second team, he has Doncic as a guard. He has Kyrie Irving as a guard. He has no Chris Paul. He also has no Jimmy Butler. He has no Julius Randle. Instead, he has Kyrie. He has LeBron as a second team, and he has Rudy Gobert as a second team center since he has Embiid on the first team. So I think he was the only person with LeBron on his second team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, in the games he played, obviously LeBron was playing at near MVP level, but yeah, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah. When it comes to Jackson instead of Kawhi had Kyrie Irving. And when it comes to Trevin didn't have Randle, and he didn't have, let me see here. Trevin didn't have Randle, and he didn't have Jimmy Butler. Trevin actually didn't have Jimmy Butler on any of his All-NBA teams. Instead, he had Trae Young as a guard, and he had Anthony Davis as a forward on his second team in place of Randle.
Who was that?
He's the only Anthony Davis. Trevin had Anthony Davis on his second team. He's the only person with Anthony Davis on an All-NBA team.
Yeah, I don't think Anthony Davis should be on too, but respect you, Trevin. Just don't think.
Anthony Davis struggled this year when he did play, and of course he missed a lot of time. He only played 36 games. So he missed half the season. And then when he played 32 minutes a game, 22 points per game, 8 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, shot 49% from the field, 26% from 3. Like, he wasn't that good this year at all. True shooting percentage, 55.6%, a little bit below average, especially for a big. So yeah, honestly, if he performed like that and played the whole season, I still probably wouldn't have had him on an All-NBA team.
Yep.
Trevin says 36? ? Yeah, he only played 36 games.
Didn't do their research. Yeah, got a legacy vote. That's what. If he makes one of the third teams, whoever voted for him is basing it off of previous seasons and not doing their job as trying to make it about this season.
Yep. So let's move on to third team and then honorable mention. Honorable mention is just some players that got votes tossed in. Basically, if there was a fourth team, that would be the fourth team. Trae Young is the toss of the honorable mention. It was basically a tie between him, Kyrie, and Bradley Beal. But third team, you got Kyrie, you got Beal, you got Paul George, you got LeBron, and you got Gobert. What do you think about that third team, Eric?
Yeah, it's tough. So when it came to my third team, I originally had, I was thinking about putting Mitchell and Zion on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't have Harden and LeBron on it. And then I wrestled back and forth. And then I ended up putting Harden and LeBron on it and just not docking them for missing, the games they did because they were so good in the games they did play. So I don't have a problem with LeBron being on there. It's hard with the guards. It's kind of like the All-Star game. It's hard with so many guards, and I personally think Booker had a better year than Kyrie, who left his team several times throughout the season. And Beal, while he had a great individual season, I hit both him and Westbrook. It didn't lead to a lot of team success until late in the season, and Booker was better all season, in my opinion. So I probably would have put Booker over either one of those. But I mean, I don't have a huge problem with anyone else on this.
Yep. Let's start with Gobert. Everybody had Gobert as a second or third team All-NBA center. For the people that didn't put two centers in their first team, they had Gobert third team. For the people that put Jokic and Embiid together on first team, they had Gobert on second team. That was Jackson, and that was Reese. And Reese is his third team center, has Capella. Jackson has Bam Adebayo. Makes sense for both those guys. Capella's definitely underrated. And, if you had two centers on the first team, obviously you're going to have an extra center on your All-NBA teams.
Yeah.
As far as other picks go, I had Kyrie, Paul George, Kawhi, LeBron, Gobert. So 4 of the 5 here. You had Booker, Harden, LeBron, Julius Randle, and Gobert. Julius Randle is on our second team, like consensus. Zach had Kyrie, Beal, Paul George, Zion Williamson, and Gobert. So he didn't have LeBron at all, Zach, which I think you can make a case for that. So he had 4 of these guys, and instead of LeBron, he had Zion.
Zion had a great year.
Yeah. And it just depends on how you weigh LeBron's injuries, obviously. As far as Reese's All-NBA third team, he had Chris Paul, who's on our second team. He had Paul George. He had Jimmy Butler, who is also on our second team. He had Bam as a forward, and he had Clint Capella. That was his third team. For Trevin had Beal, Booker, LeBron, Randle, and Gobert. So he also had Booker along with you. And then Jackson had... Let me find it here. Jackson had Westbrook as a third team selection. He had Doncic on his third team. He had Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Bam Adebayo.
Wait, who had Doncic on their third team?
Jackson.
He might have to have his...
Over Doncic.
He says he misplaced him. All right. I was going to say you might have to have your mod status read.
Because Doncic could be placed as a forward. So he essentially had on second team, he had Chris Paul, Kyrie Irving, Jimmy Butler, and Julius Randle over Doncic. So not necessarily the best vote, but some consensus on this. Obviously, once you get to third team, things vary a bit. But overall, I think this is a pretty legit third team. You can definitely make the case for a Trae Young or a Devin Booker over a Kyrie or a Beal. But this consensus ballot for all NBA teams, pretty solid, I think. Anything else you want to talk about for honorable mention or all NBA third team?
Chat's talking a lot about Kyrie and how we're stupid and stuff. Or you had him higher than me, so you're not stupid.
Team, so.
But anyways, just think, if Dame played with Durant and Harden, Do you think his shooting numbers would go up too? Like, I know they didn't all play together much, but like the 50-40-90 thing doesn't mean as much to me when you team up with two of the top 10 players in the NBA and you're also a guy who at least 3 times this season just didn't show up and left the team for personal reasons. So, I mean, I don't. He had a good season when he played. I mean, he was good. Someone who teams up with KD last year and then gets Harden this year, and I'm not going to be impressed by him averaging good shooting percentages and playing well. Yeah, he should play well with that lineup. He should shoot the ball really well. But yeah, that's just me. I mean, I understand people who think he's good still, but you put him on his own team without any of that help, and he's not doing 50-40-90. He's not carrying the team to even the playoffs, let alone all NBA third team or whatever. So, yeah.
Yep. That is our all NBA teams. The last thing we have is all defensive teams. First team, you got Ben Simmons, Drew Holiday, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Draymond Green, and Rudy Gobert. Second team, you got Matisse Thybulle, Jimmy Butler, Miles Bridges, Joel Embiid, and Clint Capella. Joel Embiid obviously can be listed as a forward, as we've already touched upon.
That wasn't Mikal Bridges?
Yeah, that's Mikal Bridges.
You just said Miles Bridges.
Did I say Miles Bridges? Yeah, it's Mikal Bridges. It's Mikal Bridges.
Okay.
For my first team, let's just start with the first team. I had Simmons, Holiday, Giannis, Green, Gobert. So I had exactly this. Eric, your only different pick. You had Simmons, you had Holiday, you had Green, you got Gobert, but you had Jimmy Butler instead of Giannis. You had Giannis on your second team.
Yeah.
As far as Zach had the same thing. He had Simmons, Holiday, Butler, Green, Gobert. Let me turn my phone sideways because I'm getting to like the right side here. So okay, there, I can stop scrolling. Reese had Simmons, he had Giannis, he had Green, he had Gobert. Instead of Drew Holiday, he had Matisse Thybulle. Trevin had Simmons, Giannis, Green, Gobert, the same as this. He had Paul George instead of Drew Holiday. And then Jackson had the same 5. So pretty clear consensus. Holiday wasn't clear-cut and Giannis wasn't clear-cut, but Simmons, Draymond Green, and Rudy Gobert were all consensus first-team selections. Thoughts?
Yep. Yeah, I thought I put Bam on my second team. I thought it was
Bam?
Yeah, I
you
think
mean Giannis?
No, I put Bam on my second team. People are asking.
Well, we haven't gotten to second team.
Oh, I thought you just said. No.
We were just doing first team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I have no problem with the first team. I think that's pretty close to how it might shake out here when they're announced.
Yep. As far as second team goes, second team differed quite a bit. A lot of people did have Thybulle, Butler. 2 people had Butler first team, so he's like the top second team guy. As far as center goes, I had Embiid. Zach had Embiid. You had Capella. Reese had Capella. Trevin had Capella, and then Jackson, I believe, had Embiid. So it was a 3-3 tie at center. So that's why you got Embiid at forward. Took the top 10. Actually, Jackson had Embiid at forward and Turner at center. Miles Turner. And when it came to just kind of the other positions, you had LeBron in there. You had Anunoby in there. Trevin had Anunoby and Covington. I also had Anunoby and Covington as my forwards for my second team. Portland sucked defensively. Maybe that's a knock against Covington, but I don't think it's Covington's fault. I think he's been very good defensively all season as a team defender. I think Blazer fans underrate him at this point. Maybe that's a little bit of bias, but gotta show Rocco some love. But you had Miles Bridges a couple times as well. Reese had Van Vliet as an all NBA defensive second team guard. I see you shaking your head.
I mean, he was decent defensively probably above average, and is a good role or a good example of someone who can play good defense who isn't thought of as a good defensive guard. But yeah, I don't think he belongs on either team there.
Yeah, he had Van Vliet over Bridges, over Marcus Smart, over I don't know. Like the fourth guard was kind of up in the air, basically. Some people put Butler at guard, some people put Butler at forward. The people that put Butler at forward, you had like one vote for Smart, which was from Zach. Then you had like people listed Bridges as a guard. I don't know if he qualifies at guard even, but you had Bridges as a guard vote. I assume he does. You had Bridges as a guard. So yeah, pretty up in the air. I think I've listed everybody that got votes for second team, but that is what the second team came out to.
Yeah, as much as I agree with everything you said about Rocco, I can't put any player from a bottom three defense on my teams. It's just not something.
It's an individual. It's an individual
know, but,
basing. It's not a team basing, and like it's not because of Rocco that they're 29th. I mean, you know the reason.
Yes,
you and I both know the reason.
I 100% agree. It just still can't justify him putting him over any of these other really good defenders simply because of how poor overall the defense was. Even if it's not right, or I'm obviously I wanted to put him on here. I hope he makes a team. I just don't think that this bad of a defense should have anyone on a all defensive team.
Yeah, I don't base like all NBA teams and all defensive teams. I don't really base it off of teams so much. I think it's more of kind of an individual thing, individual performance thing. And I think performance wise, he's been just as good as a Mikal Bridges, just as good as like some of the, better than a Van Vliet. So like in terms of individual performance, I had him on here for that reason. I'm not knocking him for the team, but obviously I didn't take that into account as much as you did, which is completely fine.
Yep.
But Van Vliet is definitely head scratching for Reese.
Yeah.
How's Holiday over Thibault? I mean, how many minutes per game did Thibault even play? You know what I mean? Like, he played 20 minutes per game. Holiday's out here playing. Let me see. Holiday's out here playing 32 minutes per game. Now, obviously, that's because Holiday's a much better offensive player, but like he has a much bigger defensive impact on a game because he's playing more. He's also in the starting lineup, whereas Thibault has only started 8 games. So Thibault's off the bench. So he's defending against bench players. Holiday's defending against the best guards in the league. So that's how Holiday's better than Thibault.
Yep. Dame Doll is asking why Miles Turner's not on there. Just, I don't know. I feel like he's become first of all, he missed a good portion of the end of the season, and second of all, I'm not willing to die on this hill either, but I feel like
basically you just don't want to die.
Yeah, I feel like he's getting a little Whiteside-ish with his defense, and I feel like he is really overrated by a lot of people, and he kind of broke off their schemes a little bit, and it kind of made their team a little worse when he did play. Now they had decimated by injuries and stuff, so this isn't like the main factor, but I feel like he just watching him individually, he was starting to do his own thing and chase blocks a little bit. But like I said, I'm not willing to die on that. It's just something that I was observing.
Yep. So that is the awards rankings, or the awards show. That is our awards show. Hopefully you enjoyed. On Thursday, we plan on doing bracket predictions for the playoffs. That stream will be going live around 9:30. At that point, there should be only one play-in game left. So we'll just incorporate that as part of the bracket predictions because the game on Thursday, the play-in game, tips off at 5, so we'll be done at 7:30, and then we'll be streaming it 2 hours later at 9:30. So only one more play-in game will be up in there. That'll be the 8th seed. So we'll just incorporate that as part of our predictions and do a playoff prediction show on Thursday, and we can preview the Blazers Nuggets series a little bit more. Then it'll be a little closer to the series, and obviously they'll be a part of our predictions. So yeah, does that sound good to you, Eric?
Sounds perfect.
Sounds good. Alrighty. So no stream tomorrow, no stream Wednesday, and then the stream on Thursday. We'll have the post-game show, assuming the Blazers, play on Saturday, is kind of my guess right now, but we should get an update on that. We should get the first round schedule coming up here soon. So our streaming schedule beyond this week is definitely TBD. We'll just have post-game shows as normal. On game days, Blazers Uprise Live will be live around 3:30 p.m. On non-game days, we will go live around 9:30 p.m. So night streams on non-game days, and then day streams on game days to just preview the game later that day. That is the plan. Anything you have left, Eric?
No, it's been fun. Thanks to all the mods for getting their votes in, even though they rushed them and missed some people. But hope you guys all participated and enjoyed participating and telling us what your picks were as well. Thank you all for watching.
Yep. Fun to do a different, fun to do like an actual award show, something different. Normally it's picks against the spread and then something else. Now at this point we, have this week no other streams, so putting in a little bit more into this and doing a couple different things and opening up some debates. Me and Eric don't normally debate on anything, so it's nice to actually be able to debate a little bit. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this live stream. We will catch you again on Thursday. Hope that we can see you then for a similar stream this time. We'll be doing something a little different in terms of I don't know what I'm saying. It'll be unique, basically. It'll be unique, just like this one. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, hope you have a good rest of your night. Hope you have a good Tuesday and a good Wednesday. We will catch you again on Thursday. Until then, we're out of here. Until next time, as always, peace out. Go Blazers.